order. Eliana, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee McBride?
Here.
Trustee Marcus?
Here.
Trustee Diaz-Slocum?
Here.
Vice President McAvoy?
Here.
President Lawson?
Here. So item 4.2, report out on closed session. The district gave direction to council to settle the dispute. So welcome everybody to our July 22nd special board meeting. I've posted some links in the chat to the agenda and the Google Doc for our speakers cards, and I'll go ahead and post those again in a few minutes. If you would like to speak to the board, please fill out the Google Doc, and please make sure you include your name so that we know who to unmute when the time comes. If the item you wish to address is not on the agenda, you'll be called on during oral communication. Due to the Brown Act, the board is allowed to hear your comments, but we cannot have a discussion on it. If the item you wish to address is on the agenda, you'll be called on when that item is being addressed. And public comments are going to be limited to 2 minutes per person. Please make sure you submit your comment card by 6:15 tonight, because we will be cutting off the receipt of those cards. Just a note, not all trustees are able to follow the chat box. So if you would like to speak to the board, please, again, fill out your comment cards. And I do ask that you please be respectful when using the chat box. I know there were some issues with that last week. Just a reminder that because we're meeting via teleconference, all votes are going to be by roll call. So we are on changes to the agenda. And I'm going to pull item 10.1 off the agenda and hopefully bring it back next week after I get further clarification on one of my questions. Are there any other changes? If there are none, is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Maria and Dennis, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee McBride?
Aye.
Trustee Marcus?
Aye.
Trustee Diaz-Slocum?
Aye.
Vice President McAvoy?
Aye.
President Lawson?
Aye. Thank you. So we do have one comment card on oral communication, so we'll move forward with that one. It's John Langbian, I believe. So Kyle, if you pull him up. While that's happening, I just want to remind people that there is a 2-minute timer, and I'm going to share my screen, and you'll be given your 2 minutes to speak. And then there's going to be a short beep at the 30-second mark so that you know to wrap up your comments. And when your time is up, you will be muted. And that goes for all the public comment cards going forward for our other items. And I do call those in order that we receive them based on the timestamp in Google Docs. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with our timer. Hang on. Okay, so do we have, John, are you ready?
In a moment, I want to pull up my, got to fill something here. Wait a moment. I think it just went full screen on me. Okay. Let me...
Oh, sorry. I did do that.
Okay. All right. I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm John Langbine. I live in the neighborhood adjacent to Selby Lane School. Since the initial shelter in place, the grounds of Selby Lane School have been blocked with a tall chain link fence. There's a continuous path through the school grounds that have provided a safe and convenient passage between our neighborhood adjacent to Atherton Road and the streets of Atherton for pedestrians and bicyclists. During the height of the shelter in place, we were encouraged to walk for exercise, but for our small neighborhood, we were restricted to a 2-block area since our neighborhood is bounded by Kentfield Commons, which is posted no trespassing, and Woodside Road. Furthermore, for those who continue to walk in Atherton, they would need to negotiate a 3.5-foot wide sidewalk on Nimitz, which is hardly conducive to social distancing. Plus, it's a long, circuitous route. Early on, I corresponded with Don Diaz of the school district, Although he was sympathetic with our plight, he stated that the health officer's orders required shutting access to the schoolyard. In addition, there would be construction, in part to address possible security concerns. As an aside, I tried looking at the health department website for specific orders with respect to the schools, but didn't find any that spoke to school ground closures other than limiting access to playground equipment and basketball courts. Consequently, I visited the nearby Ford School, although there were and still are signs posted about the closure. It's easy access to the fields behind the school. In no way there's any significant barriers like the tall rented chain link fences that surround Selby Lane School. In fact, Selby Lane School has, there are two sets of chain link fences blocking the passage between Atherwood side and the campus. I have two requests: allow bike access through Selby Lane School now. Recently, I looked at the school grounds during a period of construction and didn't see any obvious bike ped access issues. The caveat is that there is some sidewalk construction going on now by the entrance. And then in the future, I worry about security concerns of the school will lock out future access to the school grounds during non-school hours. For the past 30 years, I've used the route through Selby Lane School as part of my bike commute home from Menlo Park. This saved me from contending with traffic on Woodside Road. Even for an experienced cyclist like me, can be at best daunting. This route through Selby Lane School serves many cyclists who live not only in my small neighborhood, but in the Downs housing development encompassed by Kentfield Commons and their neighbors.
I'm sorry, your 2 minutes have run out.
Okay, I'm done.
And we can have the superintendent look into that with Dawn, what the issues are there.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that was the only one on oral communication, so we can move on to, we can open the public hearing regarding the neighborhood schools attendance boundary change.
So at this point in time, good evening, I'd like to introduce Zach Worthen, I believe it is the last name. Hopefully, Zach, I didn't.
Worthen is correct.
Okay. And Zach has been our development director working with us. And I know that President Lawson and also Trustee McBride have served on the subcommittee regarding the boundaries for the Redwood City School District. And I don't know, either Trustee McBride or President Lawson, if you wanted to give kind of an overview of the participation that you both have been part of prior to Zach's presentation, or shall we start with Zach's presentation first?
So Janet, what would you like to do?
Yeah, I was just, sorry, I was gonna ask you that. I was trying to send somebody a message.
Yeah.
No, I think we can do the presentation first.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, Zach, it's yours.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Baker. If you've been listening to these meetings, you've heard some of my presentations before. Today, we are going to be going through a third scenario. We're going to be briefly reviewing the methodology and our first two scenarios, and then going through a third scenario that myself, Dr. Baker, and the subcommittee of several of the trustees worked on to kind of try to synthesize the feedback that we heard from the community, the feedback that we heard from trustees, and present a third scenario to allow us to kind of get the best of all of the situations that we could come up with. The way that this is going to unfold, the folks have listened to this before. The first about 2/3 of this are the same presentation that was given several weeks ago. It's just representing scenarios 1 and 2 to make sure that people who have access to the documents and materials have all that information in front of them and can do a side-by-side comparison. Scenario 3 is a new scenario that has not been presented to the community in public meeting before, although it has been available since July 6th for review and comment by the community. So we're going to go through those. I'll try to be a little bit faster in the scenario 1 and 2, and then a little bit more in depth in scenario 3, so folks get a clear understanding of what that is. Just like we did on the last public meeting. I'm going to do a brief walkthrough of the methodology to make sure people who are new to the process understand what the slides are saying and what the information that we're looking at is. So here we can just see that methodology, or the agenda that we just talked about. We're going to go through the methodology and the school-by-school enrollment of each of these scenarios, again, with an emphasis today on scenario 3. Real quickly, methodological review, we're looking at some difficulties of understanding geographic versus enrollment projections. As we said before, boundary review processes are attempting to solve an immediate or a near-term problem that is usually over or under-enrolled schools with a long-term solution. It's best practice to plan for boundary changes that can last many years into the future, rather than having to redo boundaries over and over again every few years. Reduces disruption to the community, it lessens financial burdens on the district, and nationally, usually we strive to ensure that all families can attend the neighborhood school should they choose to. Districts with a strong tradition of school movement or school of choice, like Redwood City, can change that calculus. We want to make sure that there are more open seats within a district's geographic boundaries can actually be a positive outcome for that boundary process, ensuring that the students and families have the options to choose the schools that best fit their needs around the district. The first step of this scenario planning, and the one that we've been looking at lately, is what's called geographic area projections. In plain language, that basically just means that each school boundary has a set number of students who live within it. Those students have the right to attend that neighborhood school. In order to demonstrate a mathematical viability of a new boundary, we always want to make sure that we're not creating neighborhood boundaries with more students than can actually attend the school in that boundary. This is sort of that first hurdle to clear. And a scenario that doesn't meet those criteria, we've actually dismissed out of hand. So there are lots of scenarios that we could have proposed that wouldn't have ever met that criteria. Those are never going to make it to public meeting. Once we've ensured the viability of those boundaries, the enrollment projection incorporates all those other behavioral decisions made by families and policy decisions of a district and a school board. They provide an actual estimate of the schools to enrollment, and they're dependent on a lot of different factors, as is very important in Redwood City school of choice options, and as is an issue in every district in America, transportation, out-of-district transfer rules, and board policy. To give people an understanding of this methodological review, we're actually going to look at one of Redwood City schools. Right now we're looking at Roy Cloud's current K-8 boundary. Those factors that we listed above have differing effects, not just district to district, but actually school to school. As families weigh their own options, weigh the different things that different schools offer, and make decisions around that. Below, you can actually see the students plotted in that Roy Cloud boundary, which shows that almost 650 K-8 students live within that boundary. When we dig deeper, though, we can see that only 490 of those 640 actually attend Roy Cloud. It means 260 of those other students attend Roy Cloud who live in another catchment. Those could be thought of as the open enrollment transfers in, and also that RCSD families utilize that commitment to school of choice, and 130 students who live within the Roy Cloud boundary actually transfer out. A majority of those students transfer to North Star, Adelante, Selby, and Orion. Up to this point, the scenarios that we've looked at have presented, have gone through those geographic area projections and ensured their mathematical viability. As we've integrated the feedback from the district and from the community, we've refined those scenarios and come up with scenario 3 and looking at the final set of comprehensive enrollment projections. On each of the school slides, you'll see these school projection tabs. This chart should be a good resource if you're going through this on your own or trying to follow through as we go through the presentation. This is just how to read those enrollment charts. We go down, you can see there's an arrow pointing to each of the different numbers explaining what they are. That first line is capacity. Those are the new capacities provided in June by the RCSD facility staff. The second line is students resident in the neighborhood. That means the students resident within that boundary line that we've drawn. The next line down is students using their options to attend a school of choice or Kennedy Middle School. Beneath that, we see students and capacities attending the school from within the neighborhood boundary. So that's the students who live within the school boundary and also choose to attend that school. When we back all those numbers in and out, what we have left is the available seats for open enrollment after neighborhood students are guaranteed a spot, which is to say, how many seats do we have left for school of choice optioning in? At the very bottom, we also have the actual audited enrollment from October 2019, just for comparability. So people who have a lived experience within the building understand what the proposal means as compared to what the current enrollment of the school actually says. So scenarios 1 and 2 have been presented to this community and board before, so we're not actually going to go through them in depth. Again, they're part of this presentation so that people have a chance to compare them. We're going to talk about the sort of driving focus behind them, but I'm not actually going to go through them school by school. Scenario 1 leaves several of the K-8s unchanged, Hoover and Roy Cloud notably, and divides the attendance areas of the other buildings up between adjacent catchment areas. All of these buildings are mathematically viable, but they may have more of a variance in capacity usage than some of our other buildings. So in other words, we haven't strived to make every building equal capacity, but rather to make sure that they're just all capacity viable, and then try to leave some other things as much the same as they have before. So again, these schools we've already presented to the community and the board. Unless trustees would like me to go through them in a more comprehensive way, my inclination is just to move on to scenario 3, which has not been presented yet to the community and the board. Does any of the trustees have an objection to that plan?
I can't see you guys, so speak up if you object to that. Okay, go ahead, Zach.
Great. And again, for members of the community who have access to this deck, please feel free to review these in your own time and get a better understanding if you weren't able to join the previous meetings of what scenario 1 and scenario 2 show.
And those slides are attached to the agenda, and Elisa just posted the link to the agenda in the chat again.
Thank you, President Lawson. So the new presentation for today is what was called Scenario 3, or the Community Input Map. Again, our last 2 scenarios that we've presented, one was looking at a more balanced and one at a less change focus. And what we're looking at now is a scenario that is based on the community input and the board input from our previous meeting. This scenario integrates those pieces from each of those as prioritized by members of the community and the board, as well as the general feedback. And we actually are going to go through these in a little more detail to make sure people understand what constitutes each of these boundaries. And just so folks are aware, these are in alphabetical order, and they're in the same order for each of the 3 scenarios. So looking at Clifford, what scenario 3 does is it assigns all of the former John Gill neighborhood attendance area to the northwest of Jefferson Avenue to the Clifford K-8 catchment. It ensures that the Bear Island area is still assigned to Clifford, which was different in scenario 2. And it also helps to balance between Roosevelt and Clifford. There were some other scenarios that we looked at where either Clifford or Roosevelt absorbed a large part of the former John Gill catchment and didn't always prioritize in a sensible way balance between the 2. This also responds to some community feedback about some of those neighborhoods in the former John Gill area, which may have more direct lines of travel to Clifford K-8. I'm going to go through each of these without pausing for questions. If trustees have any questions about them as I go, please feel free to interrupt me because I'm full screen. I can't actually see you physically, so please feel free to unmute yourself and let me know. Moving on to Garfield. Garfield in scenario 3 takes the Atherton portion of the former Selby Lane neighborhood attendance area, as well as all of the Selby Lane neighborhood north of El Camino, and assigns it to Garfield. As opposed to the other 2 scenarios, what this does is it actually helps balance that capacity usage between Garfield, Hoover, and Ford all much better, prioritizes all 3 of them, and allows for a more sensible layout of each of those schools. Moving on to Henry Ford, the eastern portion of the former Haas attendance area is assigned to the Henry Ford catchment. This is the same as in scenarios 1 and 2. It helps unite the annex of the Henry Ford boundary bounded by Wheeler Avenue with the rest of the area. It also assigns the rest of the former Selby Lane neighborhood area, that is not assigned to Garfield to Henry Ford. That includes Kentfield Commons, it includes the rest of Redwood Oaks, and everything to the south of Nimitz Boulevard. In scenario 3, there is no change to the Hoover catchment, as the board priorities do not expressly assign it to any of the consolidated schools to it. And Hoover is a school that's actually slated to grow by 2026, leaving with a fairly healthy attendance and capacity usage. The Kennedy Middle School catchment in scenario 3 mirrors that of TAFT and Henry Ford K5. So the TAFT, which includes the former Fair Oaks neighborhood, remains assigned to Kennedy. In addition, because scenario 3 includes changes to the Henry Ford catchment, those same changes are here applied to the Kennedy Middle School catchment, which includes, again, those areas including Kentfield Commons, the area south of Nimitz Boulevard that was formerly part of the Adelante neighborhood, and the Redwood Oaks area. Keep in mind, as we've said before, with areas that are changing alignment between a K5 and a K8, students who currently live within an area will retain the right to attend the comprehensive middle school if they so choose. So that would mean students in catchments, including Roosevelt and Clifford, would retain the right to attend that 6A comprehensive middle school if that was their family's decision. Moving on to Roosevelt, the northwest portion of the former Hawes neighborhood remains assigned to Roosevelt K8. The southeast portion of the former John Gill area remains assigned to Roosevelt K8. And the portion of that that used to be part of the Kennedy 6A catchment area assumes that students remain attending Kennedy Middle School or their school of choice, regardless of whether their neighborhood is now a K5 or becomes a K8. Moving on to the Roy Cloud projection, there are very few changes to the Roy Cloud boundary in scenario 3. There are a few small tweaks to help reflect some traffic patterns and other things that needed sensible correction. But what it does do is this retains a large amount of capacity for open enrollment choice in, which is a feature of scenario 3's Roy Cloud boundary. The TAFT elementary school projection is unchanged from scenarios 1 and 2. It incorporates the former Fair Oaks neighborhood attendance area. It retains elementary school capacity as well as the K5 and 6-8 feeder pattern. And again, scenario 3, unlike scenario 1 and 2, does ensure that the Bear Island annex remains assigned to Clifford Elementary School. I'm going to go on to the side-by-side boundary capacity and summary table and leave this up for a few moments if the trustees have any questions, and then I will go to our next slide, which is a comparison across the 3 scenarios that puts all of those enrollments side by side. So that is the end of the scenario 3 presentation. I'm going to hand the mic back to President Lawson, who you guys can follow up, and then open for public comment.
Okay, so before we go to public comments, does the board have any clarifying questions or comments?
I think it'd probably be a good time for us to walk through the methodology.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, let me, I've got like 40 sets of things here. As Zach mentioned, we had 3 meetings, and it was Zach, Dr. Baker, President Lawson, Jorge Quintana, the Director of Communications, and myself. We spent time talking about the first 2 scenarios. We talked about trying to honor the requests we heard from the community about how to help our schools be more integrated. We thought of 3 factors that can contribute to that: ethnicity, household income, and language spoken at home. Years ago, when we had magnet busing, we had 80-seat buses going from the Bayside, which we're calling the Bayside, anything east of El Camino, to the hillside schools with 4 students and no students going the other way to the Bayside. So as we talked, the only way that we have the ability to deal with this is really with boundaries, and in reality, only around the edges where the boundaries meet. So the most effective way we can do this is through the school of choice process. President Lawson reviewed all school boundaries in detail and proposed some minor tweaks to clean up some areas, like a boundary was in the middle of the street. I had a couple of minor changes. We proposed moving a section of the boundary for Garfield to east of El Camino, primarily because El Camino is such a busy street to cross. We moved Kentfield Commons to Henry Ford School, and looking closely at this area, parents in Kentfield Commons would have had a shorter commute to Henry Ford than to Garfield. They could even bike or walk if they chose to do that. So we felt it made sense for folks to attend the nearest neighborhood school, and we wanted to honor the comments that we had heard about traffic. With respect to the Roy Cloud boundary, we decided the guiding principle we would use was to keep Roy Cloud where scenario 1 was, so we preserved school of choice lots for other students, And hopefully the majority would come from the Bayside, recognizing schools of choice is a lottery, so there is some randomness there. If we went with scenario 2, it would increase diversity slightly, but it would reduce the socioeconomic diversity, which we felt was important. And that was probably the biggest driver. It wasn't just diversity, but it was socioeconomic diversity. We would potentially lose 85 opportunities for low-income students to attend Roy Cloud if we did scenario 2. In addition, while Henry Ford is now the closest school to the families in Kentfield Commons, Roy Cloud would be farther for the families in map 2, and they would drive right past Henry Ford to get to Cloud. So kind of at a high level, scenario 1 kept 351 open seats. Scenario 2 kept 266 open seats. So that's an 85 student reduction. And scenario 3 moved up to 363 because we changed a few boundaries that netted the 12 seats. That's up to 697 from scenario 2. And so we felt that scenario 3 was really the only way to achieve some sort of socioeconomic diversity. So that would be kind of my summary.
Sorry, I was muted. I think you covered really the basis of that. I was going to save this for after, but I think it piggybacks on what you were saying. You know, we've gotten a lot of comments that the scenario 1 and 3 is protecting Roy Cloud and forcing other schools to unfairly absorb students. But I would say that with the current boundary, Cloud continues to fill up and be waitlisted with schools of choice. And then in addition, there's schools like Henry Ford that typically struggle to open a 3rd kindergarten class due to students choicing out. So expanding their boundary will ensure that they can fill that 3rd kindergarten class while also knowing that some of those students are going to use school of choice and choice out. Those are my only comments on it, on scenario 3. And again, just a few, I mean, I really did. I think I walked through the maps. I walked the entire city through Google Maps, looking at current boundaries, scenario 2 boundaries, and then just making sure that things matched up, like one house at the end of the cul-de-sac was, you know, in a different school boundary. And then, you know, looking at traffic patterns as well to make sure that we have safe roads and people are able to walk to their nearest school. So with that, should we go to public comments?
Yeah, I just point out to the board, obviously you can kind of pick and choose. You can make a scenario 4 and take pieces of 3 that you like and 1 you like and 2 you like. So we just didn't feel like we could do that without creating so many scenarios. But, you know, the board obviously could modify any one of these 3. Thank you.
So, Dr. Baker, I did have a question on that. If we choose tonight to try to modify one of the existing scenarios, do we need to then have another? So I know we have our hearing next week and a decision, hopefully, because we have had a lot of conversation about this. But if we were to make a minor tweak to one of the scenarios, would we have to do 2 more public hearings? I'm just curious on that, because I know there's also an interest in the community kind of move forward on this and be done. I've also heard that comment. So I'm just curious about that, legally, what we need to do.
Legally, you wouldn't have to do that. These are the 2 public hearings you'll have. If you make a small tweak, you don't have to come into a public hearing, but you will go through the process of explaining what that tweak is and why.
Okay, and then they would still have an opportunity to, well, hear it tonight, of course, and then comment next week before a final decision is made. Okay, because there were, you know, a few tweaks to different scenarios that we got through emails and we may hear tonight. So that's helpful to know. Okay, thank you.
So for public comments, I'm gonna share my screen with the timer. So Zach, I think you might need to stop screen sharing in order for me to do that. Thank you. Okay, so our first speaker's card is Matt Collier.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, members of the board, for taking the time to listen to my concerns tonight. I wanted to share my concerns about scenario 3. It moves the Roy Cloud boundary to the west side of Alameda de los Pulgos, previously included both sides, which includes my home, and it was an important factor in choosing it. My oldest son is currently enrolled in Roy Cloud for the fall, but my youngest isn't old enough to attend yet, so he would be zoned to Clifford with this new plan. The previous 2 proposals didn't change this boundary, and I've spoken to at least one other neighbor who would be affected on next door, who is also concerned about this change. Therefore, I respectfully ask that the board restore the previous boundary to both sides of Alameda in the 3rd scenario. Would you be willing to do that? Thank you for taking the time to consider my proposal.
Thanks, Matt. And I think that you probably live on that like 2-block section of Alameda that that I looked at because of driving directions and which way you would turn. And it was a really weird, the boundary hops over across Alameda for just 2 blocks. Is that correct? Is that where you live?
Yes, I live right on that corner, right on that strip.
Okay, so the board can talk about that. All right.
Brianna, what's the cross street there, or what, or Matt?
It's Jefferson and Alameda, so I'm like right across from the gas station.
So it's like if you're driving east on Jefferson and turn left onto Alameda, it's like 2 blocks right there.
I don't even think it's 2, well, yeah, it's 2 blocks, but it's
Yeah.
only 1 house deep on the right-hand side of Alameda.
It's on the right side when you do that.
And so that in scenario 3 moved from Roy Cloud to what?
Clifford.
Clifford. And
To
part of that was
Clifford.
we talked about the traffic flow of that because those houses would be having to cross Alameda to turn left to get to Cloud. We can talk about that after.
Okay, I'm just trying to visualize the comment while it's fresh in my mind. Thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker is William Paxton.
Okay.
Hi, William, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, I'd like to thank you, send a thank you to President Lawson and the board and Decision Insight and Mr. Worthen. My wife and I recently moved from the Midwest and chose Redwood City to be our home. We love the climate that allows us to spend more time outside, walking and enjoying the fresh air. We certainly appreciate the complexity of navigating the geographic and demographic trade-offs when redistricting. It's obviously way more than just drawing lines on a map. So I just wanted to express my support of option 3. We are residents of the Kentwood, Atherwood neighborhood, and I know we're typically lumped into Redwood Oaks, but there's really no pedestrian-friendly pathway that connects us to to Garfield. And you know, I just want to reiterate, thank you for addressing the concerns. And I saw that there were some extra tweaks made to option 3, and so I'm hoping that we can all agree with converge on an option that looks closest to option 3 that keeps our neighborhood going to Henry Ford.
Great, thank you. Our next speaker is Anna Fonseca Janoff.
I don't see her. There we go.
Okay, and then that's going to be followed by Michael Bergeron.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I reside in unincorporated Redwood City, Selby Lane neighborhood. Currently, I'm not a Redwood City school district parent. That being said, I do have a rising first grader and an incoming kindergartner for the 2021 school year. My understanding is a part of the shutdown for the schools was that the district was losing children to charter and private schools and had a deficit of almost $10 million. I'm going to quote this: under the decision, the identified schools will be merged with other campuses in an effort to move the district away from a neighborhood school system to one built around larger, comprehensive campuses. End of quote. My question is the goal of this new restructure to move away from neighborhood schools to larger comprehensive campuses as originally proposed? And is it to bring back families to Redwood City schools who otherwise go to charter or private schools? Will scenario 1 and 3 accomplish this, or will scenario 2 welcome the families back to the school district? And then my second point, I know you guys talk about the school of choice and how this brings in diversity, and one of the big things is the Roy Cloud School. But when I look at the great schools, I see that Roy Cloud is not diverse at all when it comes to the socioeconomics. Only 10% of the students are from low-income families. How are you all planning to make Roy Cloud more socioeconomic diverse through the school of choice option, if that's the goal? Thank you.
So Dr. Baker, because this is agendized, we can have a conversation now, or we can save all of these, write down the questions and come back. What would you like to do?
Why don't you listen to all the questions and then come back to them?
Okay, we'll do that. So we have Michael Bergeron, followed by Brian Vereshu.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thanks very much for taking my question. I live up in Woodside Hills, and as you may know, we have a homeowners association up here. I'm on the board of the homeowners association. We've had lots of discussion about these maps over the past several months. You know, the reality is we have a lot of kids in our neighborhood that go to private schools, and we as a community really would like to see that change. For whatever reasons, families have not chosen Henry Ford as our school. We think maybe that's in part because Henry Ford's not a K-8 school, and they would like to have a K-8 school for the community, that, you know, a single school that kids can go to. You know, there may be other reasons, but the fact remains that we have too many kids in too many different private schools, and there's an overwhelming desire for our community to want them in a common public school. We think changing our homeschool to Roy Cloud would be an opportunity to see that happen. And that would be good for Redwood City and good for our neighborhood to get more community involvement in our public schools. I think you guys have had significant input from this community on that. You know, frankly, with the map number 3, we had a lot of speakers on the last public hearing that were supporting this from Woodside Hills. And I don't feel like that input was really taken into consideration. You know, we're a relatively small community. We don't have a lot of students up here. It'd be a relatively easy thing to do. And it would be a great opportunity for us to really start moving kids out of public schools and into, out of private schools, I mean, and into public schools. So, you know, you said at the beginning of this that scenario 3 was based upon community feedback. I think you've had a lot of community feedback from our neighborhood, and we respectfully ask you to make that small tweak for a small number of students to allow us to go back into the Roy Cloud School District and have it be an opportunity for us to really get our kids back in public schools. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. So we have Brian Vereshu, followed by Selena Holder.
Hi, this is Brian. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. First of all, board, thank you for your leadership during this insane year. I'm sure it's not what you signed up for at the beginning, but mother of 2 boys here. We are down in the old Selby Lane neighborhood. I want what's best for our school district in the long term. And coming into this, I felt it was scenario 2, and I still kind of think it is. I share a lot of the same school of choice questions that I believe it was Anna mentioned, with about 35% of its students school of choice in. And with the limited information we have, it looks like a lot are coming from nicer neighborhoods too, and not really addressing diversity, as was kind of mentioned earlier. If the program's different from what I understand, where it's not a true lottery, where it's prioritizing and even encouraging families from other areas to be able to come into Roy Cloud, then that's amazing. But as it kind of stands on the website and how we've been had it explained to us, it feels that it is more of kind of diversity by accident as opposed to by design. And I think we'd be better served by creating a true diversity program instead of what we've got today with school of choice. If the board does decide to move forward with scenario 1 and 3, I ask that they address a couple things. Both of those scenarios push a couple schools to 80% or above capacity, or near 80%. Scenario 1, Garfield and Roosevelt, while leaving a couple down below 60%. 3 pushes Henry Ford and Clifford at or above or near 80%. So I'd love to see both of those tweaks so we don't overload some of our schools while trying to leave room for school choice in the others. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brian. Selena Holder, followed by Keely Vega.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, this is Selena, and I am also a resident of Selby Lane. Definitely in favor of proposal 2. You know, I have a rising kindergartner, and my son is TK, and I feel that any plan that leaves Roy Cloud as it is, which both has capacity and a wonderful reputation, doesn't really make sense for a lot of the reasons that have been mentioned. But just to echo, most of the people that we know in this neighborhood do send their kids to private schools. And I feel like changing the boundaries would present a wonderful opportunity to encourage those families back into our school system, which again would encourage community, and I think also address some of the diversity that you guys want to see in Roy Cloud as well. So I just really encourage you to take a second look at scenario 2, because I think it would benefit everybody.
Thank you, Selena. So
Thank you.
Keely Vega, followed by Patricia Bors. Oh, Keely's muted. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Keely Vega. I'm the mother of 2 incoming elementary students, and we also live in the former Selby Lane neighborhood and strongly support Proposal 2 because it offers the long-term balance that this district needs, we believe. I'd like to make 3 points. First, I want to address the notion that I've heard from some, including from the board tonight, that leaving open more school of choice seats at Roy Cloud promotes diversity. If we want to intentionally structure our district and design our boundaries to promote diversity, I'm all in. 1,000%, I think we should do it. But employing an opt-in lottery system to draw in new students and then patting ourselves on the back when it happens to be a diverse group is, in my view, a game of pretense. And I think that prioritizing this system over community preference and over the students who have lost their neighborhood school is unfair. Second, I want to address the issue of walkability, which was raised the last meeting and again tonight. I think walkability is ideal. I don't think it's realistic. For us and many people, we are not in walking distance. According to Google Maps, Henry Ford is a 42-minute round trip walk from our home across a state highway. And I'm sure that doesn't take into account that we'd have 2 young kids in tow. So I would urge the board not to include walkability or physical distance as a guiding point in the decision here. And I also understand that it's not a factor that's described in the board policies regarding how school boundaries are to be defined. Finally, I would like to hear from the board exactly how you plan to make this decision. I understand from the community surveys, the results of which were just only recently made public, that there was overwhelming support for Proposal 2, in concluding 88% in favor of Proposal 2 in the first survey. And I'd like to understand how the board plans to weigh that input in its decision making. I agree, one board member said there's an interest in getting this done. I agree with that, but not at the expense of getting this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Keely. Patricia Bors, followed by Colleen Voss.
So there is a Chris Bohr, same last name spelling, but no Patricia.
So let's try that one and see.
Hi, this is Patricia Bors.
Great.
So first I wanted to thank you for your hard work on the redistricting. I know this is a difficult issue and there's a lot of different interests to be weighed. I live in Woodside Hills and I have a strong preference for scenario 2. I have a rising first grader and a rising TK and then one who will be starting school in a few years. And I think it's disappointing that our kids don't know any of their neighbors' kids. We really feel kind of isolated up here. And I am for any kind of redistricting that would allow more of a community with the children here, and just to feel more a part of the community, a part of Redwood City. And for whatever reason, the people in Woodside Hills the kids aren't going to public school. I know for me, Roy Cloud is a great option because I could have all kids K through 8 at the same time instead of shuttling, from school to school. I know I agree with Keely about not trying to force socioeconomic diversity. And while that's an important point, I'm curious to see how, our ethnicity is actually Spanish. My family is Cuban and we speak Spanish at home. And from what I know, there's quite a bit of ethnic diversity in Woodside Hills. So as far as ethnic diversity and language spoken at home, that wouldn't be affected. Or that would be an important thing to consider. And I don't know if it was, I don't know how it was considered. So I was wondering that. And then again, a quick point is that I think there's only about 30 students that would be going to elementary school in Woodside Hills. So it's a really small group of people that would really benefit from scenario 2 and having Woodside Hills in the Roy Cloud district. So I think that's something to consider, that even if you modified.
Oh, sorry, Patricia, you ran out of time. So we're going to move on to Colleen Voss, followed by Frank Hanig.
So I've enabled her, tried to unmute.
Colleen.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Colleen Voss, and I'm one of the 80 people who co-signed the Selby Lane community letter in support of scenario 2. And I think it's unfair that our input and requests for being put into Roy Cloud goes completely unheard in scenario 3. And it just doesn't seem right to me that 88% of the community vote was in favor of scenario 2, according to the community survey results. But the third scenario that is described as the community input scenario was based more closely on the scenario 1 map and leaves Roy Cloud basically untouched. So I'm wondering, why wasn't the scenario 2 map also altered to adjust the community feedback, like the small nuances, left out cul-de-sac, street alignment, direction, etc.? Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. So Frank Hanig, followed by David Eicher.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I am also in support of scenario 2, or doing a minor tweak to scenario 3 in order to support the Woodside Hills area going to Roy Cloud School. And you talked earlier about traffic patterns, nearest neighborhood school being a consideration. And really the Fernside and Alameda streets create a real geographical barrier to going to Henry Ford School. And I think it's important to consider that by Roy Cloud being the neighborhood school for the Woodside Hills area, it would allow the parents to walk their children to school, and they could do that for all the way kindergarten through 8th grade. In the difference between scenario 2 and scenario 3 at Roy Cloud, the enrollment went from 69% down to 58%. By adding the Woodside Hills potential students back into the Roy Cloud School area, even in scenario 3, it still would not raise the percentage very much. And it would also be helpful in reducing the Henry Ford from 79% down, because that's where you'd be moving it down. So it would create better balance. So my request for you to consider is to either consider scenario 2, or if you do go scenario 3, to modify it in order to allow the Woodside Hills area into the Roy Cloud School. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. David Eicher, followed by Lindsay Semple.
So there's a Linda Eicher, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all mute.
This is Dave Eichler. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
My wife and I are longtime residents of Woodside Hills, and I would like to thank the Redwood City School Board for the time and effort you have made in considering changes to the school boundaries. Now, we strongly support scenario 2, which would move residents from Woodside Hills from Henley Ford Elementary and Kennedy Middle School to Roy Cloud. We feel that scenario 2, which seems to have a lot of support here tonight, as well as in your survey, offers the most change and provides more balance for the entire school district. In addition, we really like that students could attend one school from kindergarten through 8th grade, which we feel helps foster a strong bond and sense of community for both students and parents. It was this reason that years ago we elected to have our children attend a private school rather than attend 2 separate schools. Since we aren't in the Woodside School District, it's difficult to develop a sense of community in our town because most of the town's activities revolve around their school. If the residents of Woodside Hills had one small school, such as Roy Cloud, to support, I'm confident that we would embrace the school and support all of its activities. If the board decides to move forward with scenario 3, then we would hope that the board consider moving Woodside Hills into the Roy Cloud School. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. So Lindsay Semple, followed by Abraham Fraley.
So there's no last name. This is just a person named Lindsay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Temple, and I really want to thank you for taking the time both to consider all of the school districting questions you have and also to hear my concerns tonight. I have 2 young school-age children. One is a rising first grader and one will join pre-K. Currently, we go to private school and we live in the Woodside Hills neighborhood. Especially given these times, schooling is very top of mind for me and I'm considering all options. I strongly support either scenario 2 or a tweak to scenario 3, wherein my neighborhood of Woodside Hills is districted to Roy Cloud. I believe that would provide an opportunity for the school to help build our small sub-community instead of the current approaches like mine of private school or school of choice. I think the community feedback that you've attempted to incorporate in scenario 3 is admirable, and I would hope that you extend that honor to the community feedback you've heard that has been very strongly in support of scenario 2, either via the survey results or the speakers tonight. It is certainly something that I consider very seriously as I look forward to what my kids are going to do this coming year. Thank you very much for listening to my feedback.
Thank you, Lindsay. Abraham Fraley, followed by Rebecca Bernard.
And so both of those I cannot find in the list.
Okay, so I'd ask if either of you are here, can you put your hand up? Otherwise, we'll move on. The next would be Annie Hildebrandt, followed by Lisa Carr.
There you go.
So who do we have?
This is Annie Hildebrandt.
Okay, hi Annie, go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you very much for all your hard work with this. We live in the Woodside Hills area and are very happy going to Roy Cloud. Our son loves riding his bike from our area to Roy Cloud, meeting his friends on the way. They all go up to school. We would love our daughter to be able to join Roy Cloud. And we think it's the most balanced option is map number 2. It only adds about 30 kids from the Woodside Hills neighborhood to Roy Cloud, and it does embrace diversity. That's all we had to say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Annie. So Abraham has his hand raised.
Yep. So Abraham is active now.
Abraham, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yes. First off, I just want to thank the entire board and all the community input. It's been a process, but especially during these trying times, I just want to thank you. I think it goes without asking or saying that you guys have done an amazing job. That being said, I want to kind of speak out for my wife is Rebecca Bernard. She won't be speaking. She's putting down my baby, but a father of 3, all incoming or will be incoming next couple of years. Build on Keely and what others have mentioned during this process is the walkability. Even if we didn't have this district rezoning, Selby is even unwalkable for us. We live in the old Selby area next to Woodside High School. No sidewalks. And even right now with scenario 3, we would be going to Henry Ford and we would have to cross a state highway, which in historical data has been a multiple fatality area without many good crossing areas. That also being said is developmental and school boundary alignment with demographic data from Roy Cloud rezone for an area that already feeds into Woodside High School for the Roy Cloud census area. Continuity is ideal for our students and community. This also aligns with the existing boundary and demographic data for low capacity school. Inherent bias posed by school of choice being prioritized over rezoned areas is kind of frustrating. It sounds like the rezoning is going forward, but the school of choice is being prioritized, and the inequalities in the community engagement process atop processes other imbalances. If low capacity schools remain unchanged, will school of choice or open enrollment policies be changed to address the concerns raised by areas most affected by recent changes? Goes into the demographic data. And I'm almost out of time, so I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abraham. So next, if Rebecca Bernard's not here still, we have Lisa Carr followed by Julia Feng.
So there's just a Lisa, no last name.
That. Okay, we can try that one.
Hi, this is Lisa.
Hi, go ahead.
My name is Lisa Carr, and I have lived in Woodside Hills neighborhood for a couple of years. And I was very surprised when I moved in to learn that the children, the 30 or so children in this neighborhood, did not go to the local public school. Very surprised and frankly very disappointed. Although I don't have school-age children anymore myself, I was very active in the public school system. And in fact, I actually attended Selby Lane School and Kennedy Middle School long ago. And so I'm also very supportive of the Redwood City Public Schools. And the fact is that the children in Woodside Hills are not going to public school. And I think it would be incumbent upon you to listen to all of the people who have spoken up and supported the scenario that allows Woodside Hills to go to Roy Cloud, or scenario 3 with the tweak that someone earlier mentioned of including Woodside Hills in that district. You would be supporting the move from private school to public school in a neighborhood that financially supports the Redwood City schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I did have Julia Feng's card on the wrong topic. She put in for the reopening schools. So the last speaker's card on this is Katha Hall.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I respect the research and efforts that you've gone through in the various scenarios. My husband, Ron Hansman, and I have been residents of Woodside Hills for 23 years, and our daughter is beyond school age, but I will say that there is no sense of community here for kids, as everyone has pointed out. I certainly agree with Mike Bergeron's and the other comments that only a small percentage of students here would attend, and I wish I could have sent my daughter, taken her out of the private schools and supported the public schools, because I believe in that concept. And Woodside Hills does have some ethnic diversity. Our tax dollars, our property taxes do go to Redwood City as it is, so it would be positive to have our kids attend the public schools. And if 88% of the community voted in favor of scenario 2, I would think it would be respectful of the wishes expressed to listen to that vote. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. So that's the end of our speaker cards on this topic. So the board will have an opportunity to ask questions and discuss now. Would anybody like to go first? Nobody has anything they want to say? Okay. So I guess, Dr. Baker, we can answer a couple of the questions about are we moving away from neighborhood schools and how we would diversify cloud. I can speak to that point about the 10% low income cloud. You're muted, but I think you're telling me to go ahead.
I'll pipe in with you.
So it's really important to me to point out that the difference between scenario 2 and scenario 3 with Roy Cloud is that we basically solidify Roy Cloud being 99% above the median household income, I think was the term. Maybe Zach, you remember what it was. Whereas scenario 3 leaves it open so that we can actually reach a measly 10% low income at that school. It's not perfect, and we can talk about changing the school of choice program to prioritizing low income. We haven't historically done that, but scenario 2 is going to just solidify that it's 99% above, yeah, not low income. Zach's nodding his head.
Actually, and Janet, just to add that to that, Dr. Baker, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Dennis and Maria, you probably remember our schools of choice program. I mean, if you go way back, the magnet program, actually more kids did kind of move around. We had money for busing and all that kind of stuff. So that did help with some diversity, or it was meant to anyway. And then for a long while, we also had schools of choice priority for the program improvement schools, which actually did get at the lower socioeconomic students did get a priority in the schools of choice application. So actually hearing the comments tonight, that is certainly something that we could look at if we want to reinstitute, because I think when program improvement went away, there's no longer a priority, or is there, Dr. Baker?
No, there isn't a priority, but to your point and to a point from, I'm looking in the chat here of some comments that are being made. There is the opportunity, if you so desire, to change having the schools of choice and the application, and then having the criteria, and then you would have different lotteries. You'd have lotteries that would be X amount for diverse students whose families are socioeconomic, and for other students that fit a different category, if you wanted to go that way to diversify the school. But we'd have to change policy and move forward with that.
Right, so that's, I mean, that's a separate question, but I know it came up a lot in comments we've received through emails, received the district website, in the chat, and others. So I think that is helpful just to keep in mind that we could, in fact, implement something like that. And just as a reminder, the last two, couple of meetings where we heard this question and comments we have gotten is there is a strong desire by the overall community to also think about equity when we're making our decisions. So I do think that the schools of choice is one way to get at that.
Right, but Lisa, do you remember when we had priority for the students whose schools were not meeting the target data? Do you remember how upset people were because they felt that their child should have priority, even though they came from the Roy Cloud area per se, or Clifford, when it came to schools like North Star? So while we're thinking about this, I would just remind us of all of those conversations and parents who were so upset over low-income children being given priority, even though it wasn't something we did, it was mandated.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Dr. Baker and I talked today about you could come up with two lotteries. You could say 60% of the students are students of color, and so we'll take all the schools of choice open seats, take 60% of them and put the parents in that 60%, and then you could take all the non-students of color in the remaining 40%, have a lottery for those, and then you would have diversity with intentionality. And then another comment was made about Roy Cloud is so low in capacity. And I think everybody needs to understand all the numbers that Zach's using are theoretical numbers and not real numbers. So if you look at Roy Cloud, they're actually at 88% of capacity. They're not at the low number people are using. And the only schools that are low are Kennedy at 55%. And I'll remind you, that's because we moved Rocket Ship off campus and freed up a lot of classrooms, and MIT's at 60, but everybody else is above 70%.
So, you know, I'm hearing feedback that we're not considering community feedback. And I will say for my part, that's absolutely not true. I am taking community feedback, but I'm also considering, you know, other factors that I have to think about. And I will just put this out there that I have a child at Henry Ford and I have a child at Kennedy, and we've been very happy with the schools. And I would gently remind anybody who wants to bring their kids out of private school to, you know, check into these schools that you're trying to avoid, the Roosevelt, the Henry Ford, the Kennedy. They are wonderful schools. Your children will be successful. And I don't think that you need Roy Cloud in order for your child to come back to the school district.
And then, you know, the other thing that I was thinking about, in addition to everything that we just said, is I do think we've been asked by people in our community to think about traffic patterns when we're making decisions. And if you look at the Woodside Hills area, which we heard a lot about tonight, we would be adding more traffic by having that particular area go to Roy Cloud, because they do have to go down to Alameda or Fernside or out to Woodside Road and onto 280 to circle around. I mean, there's not an easy get to, whereas Henry Ford and Kennedy are basically right down the hill. And when you look at Google Maps, both for driving, walking, and biking, Henry Ford and Kennedy are just so much closer than Roy Cloud. So that is another consideration that community members ask us to think about. In addition to kind of the diversity issues we talked about, there's also traffic issues. The other thing that I really like about scenario 3 is that for the most part, it really does create neighborhood boundaries that are contiguous. You know, they don't look gerrymandered, if that's the right term, whereas sometimes, you know, you can start to get those. I think you took into a lot of consideration about busy streets where we could. It's not a perfect system because the combination of neighborhood schools and schools of choice, you know, some of the neighborhood school boundaries are pretty big, but at least, you know, we tried to take into consideration the things that we could. So I do think that you did overall a good job with tweaking scenarios 1 and 2 to come up with 3. Yeah. I did have a question. There was one little zone that did not come up in the verbal comments tonight, but we did get a couple of comments about it through the district website and over email. And it's that little area, the Goodwin Street, that's near Mitchell and Fernside. And it is funny, it's like this weird little carve out that goes down to Roosevelt. So I was wondering if that made sense to connect it with Henry Ford. Again, it was another community that wanted to be together. So I'm open to that. That would be the small tweak that I was thinking about for scenario 3 that might make sense.
Yeah, we did briefly talk about that in our, well, not briefly, we talked about it quite extensively. So that area, we left the way it has always been zoned. What we heard is that they wanted to join the Roy Cloud boundary. If they want to join, you know, the Ford boundary, I think that we could make that tweak, but that's not what I heard from them.
Okay, all right. So yeah, because in the scenario 3, it would go to Henry Ford, I think, if you were keeping the pattern of boundaries. So, I mean, I wasn't sure if that little carve out had been to Roosevelt just because it was easier to walk that way. I was trying to visualize the walking, but it seemed to me that either campus is is walkable. It's just a matter if the community wants to be together.
The other one that was in the survey and we got emails is Bear Island going to Clifford, so we should talk about that.
Yeah, and Dennis, before we do that, I do want to say thank you to you and Janet for all the time that you guys spend doing this. I know that no matter which way you draw the line, there's going to be someone that's not happy. Some of the comments have been about not listening to the people that responded to the survey, but that's not the only feedback we've gotten. That was only the ones that responded. We all have received lots of emails, so many that my inbox is still acquiring them as of earlier today. So I just want to make sure that people understand that it's not only the ones that responded to the survey, but other people that have provided us with feedback as well.
So I guess what I would like to say, I'm with Janet on Roy Cloud is really not the only public school that the Redwood City School District has. When we were closing and merging all the other schools, every parent was fighting to keep their school open. So we do have some wonderful schools. Talking about the Woodside Hills, I did the map, and actually, if they wanted in K-8 school, Roosevelt is closer than Roy Cloud by, it's 1.8 miles versus 2.6. And when it comes down to traffic in the morning, I know that horrendous. So I would like to just, put it out there that Redwood City School District does have great public schools. It's just a matter of, again, touring yourself, trying it out. A lot of the times when we hear what other parents' experience had been, perhaps was a negative comment. A lot of the times they're rumors. And again, I do believe that Redwood City does have great schools. So I would be happy to have everybody look around and see what wonderful schools we have.
Totally agree with you, Cecilia. Thank you for making that comment.
So when you talked about the tweaking, Elisa, that you brought forward, and then others of you had also acknowledged some of the tweaks that were done for Map 3, where are you with that piece that you were talking about, Elisa?
Oh, that I was just so many of the comments that we got initially, I feel like were addressed with scenario 3, except for, of course, we heard tonight from Woodside Hills,
correct,
and that neighborhood that's right near Selby Adelante. But I feel like the rest of the sort of comments that we had heard about cul-de-sacs and busy streets, I think we did a pretty good job of addressing. The only area was that Goodwin Street, and we really only heard from a couple of people, so I don't know how big a deal it is, and if in fact they also wanted Roy Cloud, but that wouldn't make sense with the maps we have. It really would be Henry Ford, or they could stay with Roosevelt. I'm fine leaving it stay with Roosevelt. I don't know how we get to those people if we were to tweak it to Henry Ford. I don't know if you've heard from any of them, anybody else, or what you think, or maybe we just leave it. But I did want to bring it up because we did get a couple of comments from neighbors there that wanted to be at the same school with their neighbors, right? And do you know the little area I'm talking about, Dr. Baker?
No, I don't.
Would it be, do we want to spend the time to pull up the map real quick? Maybe we could, just so we're all, okay. It's this little zone right there.
Your eyes are better than mine.
Just a second, sorry.
Oh, actually,
I believe
I'm using my own mouse, but you're right, I'm not sharing my screen, so
I believe
you can't see it.
Can you see my notation?
Yes, that's it.
I believe that's the area we're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And then from our first comment card, that little section of Alameda, that was just one of the tweaks that I suggested because we had an opportunity to clean up some lines, but as I said in our committee meeting, that's not a hill I'm going to die on, so.
And then there was a conversation, there was a comment card, I guess, where.
So John, I feel like we're going to come back and revisit these all if we don't close them off. So can we make a decision on the one we just had up on the screen? Are we okay moving that to Henry Ford or not okay?
I'm fine with it, and I think if we do that, Zach, trying to remember, I looked at it earlier today. The line will be drawn on down the middle of Fernside, I think, to match up with Roosevelt or no, Roycliffe, I think.
So, I mean, we can, I don't want to, I mean, I can pull up the maps, if like the actual map. Obviously, this is just a screenshot, so I'm not going to get any better by zooming in on this. If it's helpful, I can pull up the actual maps if we want to do that real quick. Or we can conceptually agree to that change and figure out the actual exact line.
Yeah, actually, it's not
offline.
Fernside. It's not Fernside, but I can look it up and send it to you later.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, these seem like quick enough updates that I can provide those back to you guys, either tomorrow or Friday. So that's not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable if either Zach working with Dr. Baker, Janet, and Dennis, Jorge. I mean, that's fine. Whatever. I think conceptually you understand, and you could look at the comments. I think it's like a 2-block area of Goodwin, basically, and that little zone. Yeah.
And then what about, so Jen, I'm sorry, you run the meeting.
No, go ahead.
Could you, so I guess one question on the house street that we're talking about, is it on the side of a gas station or on the other side?
The other side.
Okay, so by what used to be that realtor's place?
No, so if you're going up Jefferson towards Kenyatta College in 280, you would turn right on the Alameda, and it's the 2 blocks on the right side, right there.
Oh, I see. Okay. That they had been zoned to Roy Cloud, and now they're
right. And the issue was when we looked at it is if they came out of their driveway, they'd have to turn left to go to Roy Cloud. So the thought was this would allow them to turn right. But I mean, again, that's not a hill I'm going to die on.
Oh, Matt. Okay, I see what you're talking about. So he's actually talking about that section on the curve where Doug the T-Rex used to be. Is that right, Matt? No.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Right in that area, right? Or close by?
East of Alameda. So that's what I was talking about. So it's along Jefferson, and I just suggested that because the line should be, to me, drawn down the middle of Jefferson. But we can put both of those back the way they were if it's going to cause this much trouble.
So someone said, Janet, it's across from where your sister-in-law lives.
Right. So that's, I know. I know. That's what I was saying. So if you're going, towards Farm Hill, you turn right on Jefferson. I mean, Alameda.
It's the one that we moved. It was a very small section, right?
Yep.
Right. Both of those where the orange circles are were very small.
Yep.
And that's why I'm like, it's fine. Put them back.
All right. So is everybody okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
That's fine too.
Okay, any more comments? And then there's a lot on the chat, but we're not going to go into the chat right now. So what I'll have Kyle do is to please save us the chat so that we can all see it, and I'll make sure that you get it sent to you so you can see what's going on.
Just in terms of actual concrete boundaries, do you need to discuss Bear Island in order for me to draw actual GIS sensitive boundaries for a final scenario? I heard some comment on Bear Island.
I thought we were going to leave that as it currently is, which is
As Clifford?
Scenario 3.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure that didn't need to be changed.
Yeah, I think that's the way it currently is, and should stay that way too.
Yeah, I didn't hear. We didn't get any comments about changing that.
No. Yeah, actually, we did. It was on the parent survey.
Oh no, I just mean leaving. Oh, was Bear Island originally with TAFT then?
Yes, it's always been, and there's
yeah,
like 4 or 5 comments to move it.
Gotcha. Okay.
No,
yeah, I guess
it currently is Clifford, I believe.
Right, but there's 5 comments saying they want to be moved.
Scenario 1 and 2 took them out and put them in TAFT.
Oh, I understand. Right,
yeah,
but historically they've been to Clifford. Yeah, so we would just leave them to Clifford. That's what I meant. I think we're all saying the same thing. Sorry, it sounds different.
So could we have Zach verify that?
Verify what?
That Bear Island is in Clifford?
Yeah, Bear Island is currently in Clifford. In scenarios 1 and 2, it had been reassigned to TAFT as part of the rest of the Fair Oaks TAFT boundary. In scenario 3, it's moved back to what its current assignment is, which is Clifford.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so are we ready to close the public hearing then?
I think so.
Okay. So we'll close that, and we're moving on to consent with a reminder that we pulled 10.1. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Maria?
Second.
That was Elisa, and can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee McBride?
Aye.
Trustee Marquez?
Aye.
Trustee Diaz-Silcom?
Aye.
Vice President McAvoy?
Aye.
President Lawson?
Aye. So thank you. We're now on to 11.1, reopening the roadmap to reopening of our schools.
Okay, so thank you so much. We had a lengthy discussion.
Thanks, Zach. Sorry.
We had a lengthy. Thanks, Zach. Sorry. We had a lengthy discussion last board meeting in regard to reopening our schools in the fall. And so first of all, thank you board, and thank you parents, staff, teachers who all came forth and provided us with some information in moving forward. And during the discussion, it was discussed to go forward and start planning for distance learning, at least for the first trimester of the fall. And so with that being said, I want to acknowledge several emails that not only myself, but I'm sure board members also received. And one was from Dr. Kiwatowski. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name. But thank you so much for the email in which you talked about social emotional learning, which we are definitely looking at for all our students and families. And not only with the assistance of our committee, but outside committee members that will be helping us move in the direction of making sure that that is definitely something that we address. I'm hoping that the Stanford Medical Department can help us in that arena. Board members, if you remember, right before COVID-19 hit, some of us were meeting with Stanford. And members from Stanford were from the Department of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry, Department of Social Services, and they were trying to see how they could help the Redwood City School District. So I've been reaching out to see if we can bring that group back to work with us, because one of the items that we had specified that we needed was some additional help in the mental health arena to help us with our students. And so with that being said, we're hoping to get a meeting within the next 5 to 10 days where we can pose to them our concerns and where we would need additional support regarding mental health. So that's another support that will be hopefully coming to us in Redwood City. Along with the discussions that we had last week, we do understand that, you know, by no means did anyone ever think we were going to be in this type of situation. You know, we're used to, as educators, used to the fall, the beginning of school. It's a new time, it's a new year, new children in your classroom, and you just rev up and you're ready to start teaching. And what happened to us last spring was that we had to pivot all of a sudden and start doing distance learning, and with very little professional development. And so it was anxiety provoking, not only for parents, but for teachers also. And it looked different throughout the school district. It looked really different. So moving forward, we know our instructional practices need to change. We know our teachers need to provide more of a rigorous instruction for this distance learning than had taken place in the spring. I don't fault the teachers because, like I say, the development was not there, the PD was not there. This is something that we're not used to doing, but we're going in that direction, and the professional development did exist the first week of June, and we're hoping to bring teachers back for another 3 additional days to start us with the units that need to be developed for each grade level. Those are days that are per diem days, so that means that we as a school district will be paying the teachers their per diem salary to attend those 3 days of professional development. There's no assistance from the state in allowing me to get a waiver to start school or to reduce days. I have to have 180 days of instruction. So we're going to really support our teachers in this process to make sure that instruction is taking place on a regular basis. There's expectations for teachers, there's expectations for parents, and there are expectations for students. All of that is going to be rolled out within the next few weeks. What we have done since the last board meeting we had a week ago tonight was to put together a structure of items of where we're going. And these items consist of instructional practices. We don't have the meat right now or it being set in stone. We've been meeting not only as administrators, but also with our professional development team. And our principals are coming back on Monday to work with us, even before they're supposed to be coming back to work, to assist us in the planning and the preparation that needs to get in place before we start on August 19th. We also want to acknowledge that we had some emails from parents in regard to metrics. If you're going to be distance learning, what metrics are you going to use to determine when you're going to be coming back? Right now, I don't have the metrics. And as superintendents in the county, those of us that are going hybrid, those of us that are doing distance learning, we have asked the county to help us with some metrics that we all can abide by. And so when we pivot, we know when to pivot. So as we feel that we can come back, we're using these metrics to bring us back. They're not made yet, but we're seeking assistance for all of us in San Mateo County. The other piece that is really important for us is definitely the training that we need to give to our parents. Parents have come forth and said they're not teachers. They need some assistance in how do they help their children when they're doing distance learning. And we will be providing additional training for parents through webinars, through meeting with us in the area of all those different platforms that we're using in instruction and instructing their children on a regular basis. We are also looking into making sure that teachers have office hours, that we're checking in with parents also to see how instruction is going. Another important item that was brought to our attention is definitely looking at independent study. I know parents talked about independent study and we're interested in that, and so we're seeking additional information, what that will look like. We've also heard from some parents that wanted to, for us to see the possibilities about homeschooling. So we sought information from one of our neighboring counties, who one of the school districts does have a homeschooling piece in their district and what that looks like. So a lot is going into providing additional information for teachers, for staff, and for parents. We don't have all the answers tonight, but what I would like Liz Wolf to share with you is where we have started. Now, this is just the beginning. And by the first board meeting in August, definitely you will see a laid out plan, what the specifics are, what the expectations are, because each grade level is going to have expectations of how many hours it's going to be when a teacher is working with students in the distance learning environment. And also specifics about the training, specifics hopefully about childcare. We know Pati Ortiz is working very closely with not only our own organizations that work with us on a regular basis here in Redwood City, but in San Mateo County. We have some parents that are working on that also to see if we can come up of helping our most neediest families in the area of childcare. And we also have some assistance from those entities that work with Redwood City right now, the Boys and Girls Club, PCC, Parks and Rec, and the Y. But like I said, it's not all in cement at this time. We've been asked about using the outside for outside education. We could do that. As I said previously, there are a lot of things that would need to occur for that to take place. Number one, our teachers would have to support that. We'd have to have some teachers that would want to come back to school and support doing some education outdoors. We would most likely have to buy some tents or rent some tents, being that, we have great weather, but it gets kind of warm in August and September and sometimes in October. So it needs to be covered. We'd have to make sure that there are desks for students. We'd have to make sure that we have the electricity that is run out to those different tents and those different areas so that teachers can use any type of equipment that they want to use with kids. And then probably we'd have to hire a security firm to help us at night to make sure that everything is kept in place. So when the kids come back the next day, they're ready to start up. So, but the main thing is to get teachers. We would need teachers to assist us in that arena. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Liz. It's an outline. You will be getting the nitty-gritty definitely the first week in August, but prior to that, we will be doing updates, not only to board, but also to the community vis-a-vis these virtual webinars. Okay? So Liz, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And there really only are a couple of slides here. Oops. And I don't have too much to add to what Dr. Baker already said, but I will give you a few more details. And so I also want to thank board president, members of the board, and Dr. Baker for leading this charge that we have made this pretty quick pivot to trying to figure out what is excellent distance learning for our district. And in the past week, as Dr. Baker said, we have been working like crazy, accessing the materials from our work that we did in late May and June when we had our subcommittee work, and then also running by our beginning proposals with some principals, with some teachers, with some instructional staff to get their feedback. Because once again, we think it's really important to have a collaborative approach in providing this excellent distance learning. So we find ourselves in this world where there's, like I just said, there's a lot going on. And so what we are working on is a handbook that will be available for teachers, and then we will make that same handbook with a little bit different information available for administrators as well as for parents. And the handbook that we are preparing has a number of items in it. Again, most of them now in draft form, but as we finalize some of our decisions and some of our recommendations, we will be bringing the specifics to you. So again, most of this Dr. Baker has already gone over, but I just want to add a few more details to this. As we're looking at this handbook, we're of course starting off with excellent instructional practices. And so there will be recommendations and guidance around scheduling and around how much time should be spent in both synchronous, which is with the teacher, and asynchronous, which is the teacher-prepared materials that students are working on independently. The number of minutes that takes place every day in each subject area. We, as part of the instructional practices, we are also focusing on maintaining connections with students.
Liz, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just need to say something about the chat. If really, the chat is getting kind of ugly right now. I've gotten a few texts from concerned individuals, and I can see the way it's going. So can people please be respectful, or can we turn off the chat? We've tried to keep it open because I think it's a good opportunity for public comment, and we do want to look at the items that we can address later that we can't not get to tonight. But if you cannot keep it above board, I think we're going to have to turn off the chat. So please be respectful. And Liz, I'm very sorry for the interruption.
No, thank you.
So I've been watching the chat, and I will say I'm about to text Kyle to ask him to turn the chat off if it continues. So go ahead, Liz.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate, because as you know, I can't see it right now, so I appreciate your vigilance on that. So talking some more about the instructional practices, where we are identifying needs for training as well as needs for making sure that the practice takes place, is that making the connections with the students. Because we know, particularly as the students return from not from the summer, but then also not having maybe the most positive experiences with distance learning in the spring, we want to make sure that they feel part of the school community, they feel welcomed, and that they know that we care about them. So that will be a definite part of our instructional practice. We also are giving guidance about how to give feedback to students in this virtual environment. Teachers are going to be asked to, as they prepare lessons for students to do asynchronously, to monitor that work and then to give feedback as students are showing what they are learning and what they are practicing. We also really, as we think about instructional practices, we're thinking about all hands on deck. It's not just the classroom teacher that's got this responsibility, it's also our instructional assistants, our TOSAs, our librarians, all the people that we have available will be part of this work under the guidance of the classroom teachers. Part of this work also is making sure that our expectations are clear for our administrators, our teachers, our students, and our parents. And that will be part of this handbook, and that will be part of our professional development. The assessments and accountability as part of these expectations will also be laid out, and part of that expectation is accounting for attendance, and so that will be something that we did not do regularly last spring, but we will be doing that regularly this fall, and we will be talking about how we will be doing that. Professional development is multifaceted. We will be looking at professional development again for our staff, for our administrators, our teachers, our classified staff, all those working with students. And there will be professional development to support the use of technology, lesson planning, the social emotional work, trauma-informed practices, really identifying the priority standards for the grade level, and again, that checking in regularly with students. But we know how important the professional development is for the parents and families as well. So one of the things that we are planning to do is send out a survey to the families about what is it that would support this work in the fall, and what is the best way to deliver this kind of training and support. So that will be coming out probably in the next few days. But we know that there are needs for the support of the use of technology, the access to community resources, outreach, and again, the clarity of the expectations for what we are providing, and then how we need to have that supported as well in the home. We are already planning 2 webinars for special ed. Those will be taking place in August. Again, there will be one in English and one in Spanish. And these webinars will highlight some of the promising practices that the special ed teachers utilized over the summer in their distance learning summer school, and that will be shown to the parents to give them some information about how their their needs will be addressed. We know that there are students who have special needs that, as Dr. Baker alluded to earlier, this is a very high priority for us. And this includes also students who may have faced trauma in these past several months. And so a lot of our training and outreach will be around identifying students who may have some social emotional needs and how do we reach out to them. We will be developing a clear referral path for students, as well as I mentioned earlier, lesson plan components and use of all of our staff to provide daily check-ins and outreach for the students. We also know that many of our staff members have been requesting some social emotional support for them as well. So this just isn't for the students, this is for our staff. We also know that there are groups of students that were not as successful this last spring, and that we need to reach out to them as well and see how we can provide them with additional supports. And those are our English learners, our newcomers and their families, our foster youth and homeless students, our LGBTQ students, and again, as mentioned earlier, the students who may have been impacted by trauma. We know also that there are special programs that we offer in our district that we need to design what an excellent distance learning program will look like for our 50-50 bilingual program, for our Adelante Selby Spanish Immersion program, and our Mandarin Immersion program. And we are working on that, and we'll be meeting with the principals and some of the key staff members to design that program. In addition, we've got, as mentioned earlier, we'll be having the webinar over promising practices for our students with special ed IEPs and how can we best support them in a distance learning environment. In terms of some learning options, as Dr. Baker mentioned, we're also looking, and I know there are people who are interested in hearing more about what would a homeschool option look like, what would independent study look like, and so we are pulling together resources and information about that, and we'll be able to talk more about that in a little bit. As always, we are investigating childcare and after-school supports with mentoring for students, possibly again through the Boys and Girls Club. And with our current partners, we just had a meeting to talk about that today, about how many rooms would be available, how many people could the Boys and Girls Club provide in terms of mentorship, and we are planning that right now. There's also been a request about what is our plan for pivoting back into a hybrid model. And of course, we will be working on that. Right now, we're trying to really finalize our recommendations for a really strong distance learning program. But as many of you heard probably on Friday or Monday, the governor's office talked about what would need to happen for districts to move back and forth between a hybrid and a distance learning plan model. And so I think we're waiting for a little bit more guidance from that, but there was a lot of consideration given to the support of this kind of pivoting back and forth from our county health officials, as well as the increased need for testing. So neither of those are available to us full force right now, but those will be part of our planning as we think about when will we be ready to go into a hybrid model. And then, as always, ongoing communication is essential. And so we are going to find as many ways as we can to communicate through newsletters, through virtual meetings, through FAQs, as well as we plan to do some additional outreach for the communities that have felt that we have not provided them with enough support, or that they haven't had enough access. And those are, in particular, are the parents from Innovate and the parents from the Bayside. And so we're having a planning meeting to talk about how can we provide better outreach to some of these communities as well. So that's it for me.
So as you see, this is the beginning of the planning, and the committees are in place. Again, if you as board members would like to partake in a committee, you're so welcome to do so, as you did the last go round when we were talking about the hybrid model. So please let us know which committee you would like to be part of. You know, Liz can send out the different committees again, and there's most like there are additional ones. But what's really going to be important for us is definitely the professional development that we're planning for our staff for those 3 days in August. It's something that's really well planned, really well developed, and needed for our staff so they can be successful in distance learning. We're spending a lot of time, spending additional dollars in that arena so that we can make sure that it's rigorous and that parents will be well aware of the expectations. And then also for parents need to let us know if there's some questions that they need answers. They, best way is to get them to myself, get them to Liz, Wendy Kelly, who's the deputy superintendent, get them to her so that we can keep a pulse on what's happening throughout the community, not only with our virtual meetings that we're having where we can have a chat because we're not meeting together in PTOs or PTAs, and we're not having school site council face-to-face meetings. But we would like to hear from parents when school starts. Give us some time to get it going. But if you see some rough spots, we want to hear about them because we as administrators need to be more alert and move forward with any type of questions that you may have and maybe any type of suggestions that we can tweak our program to make it better because we believe we can do it. They're fantastic teachers and staff in Redwood City School District. I know you heard a lot about these parents. The chat was going back and forth about schools and so forth. Teachers are doing a phenomenal job, and I want to make sure that they keep doing a phenomenal job. And it was our intent to start meeting with everybody in August. Many of your schools start with ice cream socials and all these other types of socials and gatherings to meet one another. Sorry, that's not going to happen this year. It can't happen. So maybe there'll be virtual gatherings, or the principals and the teachers will come up with something else. So I want you to feel that we know what we need to do, and we're going to do it really well. And as I said previously, please let me know if something is not working well, and let's talk about it. Had a very good conversation with a couple parents this past week regarding distance learning, and they were concerned about the time that their child had experience with their teacher. And so we talked that through, and I said, well, you need to let us know right away when that happens and let the principal know. And then, it could have been miscommunication that took place or whatever, but we need to know about it so we can help you, we can support our teachers, and we can support our staff. So we're going to make it work. Trust me, it's not going to be as some of you possibly experienced in the spring. And again, remember, in the spring, that was a quick pivot. There was no time to plan. We have the time and the ability to plan our units and move forward. So with that, board, I'll let you ask any questions you may have.
We do have 12 or 13 speaker cards on this one. So I don't know if the board wants to ask some clarifying questions or if we should take cards first.
Cards?
Okay, we'll go ahead and take
Cards
cards.
is fine.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to take these in order that they were received based on the timestamps, and then I'll have my timer going for 2 minutes per speaker. So our first speaker is Joan Perez, followed by Kelly Blackwell Garcia.
Joan's unmuted.
Hi, Joan, are you there?
I did not fill out a speaker card for this week. I spoke last week.
Oh, okay. Let's see, Kelly Blackwell Garcia, followed by Catherine Stewart.
I see multiple Kellys, but no Kelly Blackwell Garcia. So if you could identify yourself through a hand raise, that would be helpful. And then drop down to Catherine Stewart.
Yes, followed by Brian Kegel.
Okay.
Hi, this is Catherine.
Oh,
lost her.
Got her back. Here we go.
Hi. Hi, this is Catherine Stewart, and thank you for letting me speak tonight. And I'm very interested in finding out exactly how many hours per day and per week that Mandarin immersion teaching will happen actually in Mandarin. So in other words, teaching mathematics in the language of Mandarin and teaching stroke order and all the other tones and things that have to do specifically with the language. I appreciate that the teachers are willing to make videos and things, but I think that the actual interaction that's live between the teacher and the kid, even if it's over Zoom, is so much better than just staring at a screen. Because of when you're learning a language and when you're learning math, you really need the feedback of, is this right? Is this tone right? Am I writing this the right way? And so I would really appreciate knowing that as soon as we can. I realize you said August 1st, we might have more details, but the sooner we can figure that out, the better. Also, I have some concern about having people do play dates or groups with small children. I think that we're keeping the school closed because we don't want to spread things. And so having play dates, while it sounds fun, it's still not as safe as simply keeping the children home in their original home. Just because you can't see that someone is sick doesn't mean that they're not spreading it. And so I would hate to have my kid accidentally spread it to someone else. Okay, that's all. And the rest of my time, have a good, lovely evening.
Thank you, Catherine. Kyle, I don't know if you have Kelly yet.
No, so I was going to drop down to Brian Cagle.
Yeah, followed by Christy Herrera.
Good evening, board members. I am Brian Cagle, North Star Academy PE instructor and RCTA negotiations chair. I am advocating for continuing PE instruction during the 2020-2021 school year. There are many hurdles to PE instruction in a distance learning model, but our students now more than ever need to be reminded of the importance of staying active in order to be healthy and successful. Familiar face guiding and modeling safe at-home activity will be far more meaningful to our students than just playing a workout video. I have a quick comment about the outdoor learning. I like the out-of-the-box thinking, but I can tell you as a PE teacher, I've spent several days a week for the last 6 years standing outside, and it can be extremely hot. It will be extremely hot many days in the beginning and end of the year. It can be really cold and windy, and it can also be wet where there's puddles all over the ground. It's really quite unpleasant to be outside many times in the year. Thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Brian. Christy Herrera, followed by Michelle Torito.
There we go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for your time and all the effort that all of you are doing for the good of our students and staff here in RCSD. As a teacher, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we return to campus when it's deemed safe to do so. My concern is not only for the students, but for all the teachers and staff that support our campuses. As it stands right now, we don't have the tracking and tracing in place, so that would be my #1 requirement before coming back. In regards to teachers being allowed to teach from their classrooms, I saw that as a notation on the agenda. Please allow for teachers to choose if they will teach from the classroom or from home. If we are to stay safe and socially distanced, then we would need to have access to bathrooms, refrigerators, and microwaves in our classrooms. We've been told that we have to take home these items, which would not work if we have to teach at school. Many teachers don't feel safe using the communal bathrooms or the staff kitchens. There should be an option to teach from home, the classroom, or maybe a combination of both, depending on our individual comfort level and classroom situation. As we move into the winter months, we know that the holidays will bring on family gatherings that as of right now are a big reason we are seeing spikes according to the county. We have to realize that some people will generally not adhere to the no gathering recommendations for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So it makes sense then that we wait a minimum of 14 days after these holidays to return to campus. We can only manage and control what we do at school to protect our students and staff. What happens when they leave school is out of our control. Our Hispanic communities are at a high risk for infections for so many reasons. I spoke with a parent yesterday of one of my students who lives on the Bayside, and she said in her apartment complex, there are so many people not wearing masks or adhering to the regulations that they finally put up signs on how to be safe, and the health department is actually coming on site to test multiple sick families for COVID-19. These are scary times for so many of us, so my recommendation is that when we begin to consider a return to school in the second trimester, hopefully, that we do it 14 days after the break if tracking and tracing protocols are in place and the county deems it safe to do so. Thank you, and stay healthy, everybody.
Thank you, Christy. Michelle Torito, followed by Sandy Hoover.
Where did you go right now?
Because I had 5 seconds left.
Oh.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Michelle, and I am a middle school science and STEAM teacher at Clifford School. And I also serve for the RCTA as a grievance chair and as a member of the RCTA bargaining team. This is going to be my 22nd year teaching, and my heart is heavy that I won't have that back to school in-person excitement. It is something that I would have never have imagined. With that being said, I am confident that this is the safest choice for our students, families, and staff. I am confident that we will provide the best education we possibly can through many new and rigorous educational platforms. Tonight, I wanted to share my thoughts regarding the possibility of re-entry in November after the Thanksgiving break. As we know, a large number of COVID-19 cases stem from the small and large family gatherings, parties, and social events. With that being said, I would like the board to consider postponing any school openings until at least 14 days after the end of winter break. My reasoning is to eliminate as much exposure as possible to our families, students, and staff, with Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, and other holiday gatherings being in place. The safest time to safely resume, if allowable, should be January 19th instead of November 30th. Thank you for your consideration and for keeping our safety as your top priority.
Thank you, Michelle. Sandy Hoover, followed by Jamie Guiana.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, it's me again. I'm here at every meeting. We have to stop meeting like this. We've met every Wednesday for how many months? Well, thank you for allowing me to speak again tonight. And I really appreciate all the work that everyone has done on every committee. But I'm still concerned about the two key pieces to this puzzle. One is we have to follow the data. We have to make sure that we keep the cases low in our city, in the county, and in the greater Bay Area. And the number two, and probably the most important one, is the district needs to have protocol in place for a timely testing, tracking, and tracing. That way we won't be reinfecting or getting anybody else sick. I am always hopeful that I will be able to meet my TK children this year in my classroom, but it won't happen if we don't have these two key pieces in place. With or without San Mateo County Health Department's help, we need to figure out how to make this work. So thank you to everyone who's put in all this work. I look forward to meeting you because I bought my back to school dress for the first day of school and I don't get to wear it yet, so I have to figure out somewhere else to wear that dress. Thank you very much. I look forward to a safe return to school sometime this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Jamie Guiana, followed by Julia Fang.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Jamie Galena, and I'm a middle school PE teacher at Garfield Community School. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just wanted to reiterate what Brian has said previously. Now more than ever, our students need PE in their daily curriculum. While minutes are no longer required, students will be leading a more sedentary lifestyle, which really needs that physical aspect, which can really be done by their respective PE teachers. Cardiovascular health is going to be even more important going forward since these kids are going to be sitting for so long in front of their Zoom classes. We need to do our part in adding to students' social, physical, and mental health and keep PE teachers for that. Thank you for your time and stay healthy.
Thank you, Jamie. Julia Fang, followed by Kayla Camley.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Board Trustees, Dr. Baker, and amazing staff for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I really want to thank you so much for all your tireless dedication to developing our fall reopening plan with this huge pivot. As you know, I emailed you earlier regarding the fact that our district has a sizable group of learners with special needs. And I'm just so happy that you are taking the special needs and special program students into account in your planning. One of the things that I kind of had concern about were just some examples of situations that I just didn't know the answer to. So for example, let's say, you know, in the case of youngest students, I just find that full distance learning seems to be quite challenging, and it's not something that we can't overcome, I guess, with help. But it just seems like it's extremely difficult. So if teachers, you know, I think all our teachers actually are pretty amazing and have some pretty special magic. But the thing that I kind of wonder about is, you know, what good is that magic if for some reason, let's say our youngest learners just refuse to comply to attend class on screens, and so therefore can't learn. So if it's really completely impossible to offer some kind of safe in-person kind of experience, then what are the kind of tools and strategies maybe that you could help us parents with, so that we might be able to better support the students so that they can be able to have a good learning experience? Or are there other ways kind of that we could brainstorm for students and their teachers to start building relationships?
Time is up. I'm going to have to cut you off there.
Okay.
Thank you for speaking. Kayla Camley, followed by Sarah Latora.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for your time and for hearing all of our concerns and questions. My name is Kayla Camley. I am a first grade teacher at Roosevelt. I have a few things I'd like you to consider as you continue to make the plan for opening up in the fall. One of the things is access to technology for our youngest students, pre-K through first. I was a prior kindergarten teacher, and many of my students had problems attending online classes due to a lack of internet and technical devices. If you could consider how early you can hand those out to families and hotspots to allow them time to practice, to download the apps they need, for parents to attend those webinars, as they themselves may not be able to attend them without those those iPads. In addition, how can we give students physical books in the younger grades? It is so important for them to know how to turn pages, read left to right, and my fear is with reading on our online platforms, when they do go to read a physical book, it may be too difficult. In addition, with supplies, a lot of my students didn't have pencils, crayons, simple supplies. How can we provide those to our students? And my last consideration is, when can we get to know our students, or students get to know who their teacher is, so we can send them a welcome letter, a welcome video, and then the links ahead of time and the daily schedule, so parents aren't told the night before and have some time to process it and email us for more clarifying questions. Thank you for your time, and stay healthy and safe.
Thank you, Kayla. Sarah Latora, followed by Michelle Smith.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
All right, good evening. I'm speaking about the GATE program tonight. This program is the perfect vehicle to provide enrichment for our students during the upcoming distance learning trimester. I propose that the school district adopt a model such as the one employed by the Redwood City Public Library's weekly art programs. Families pick up the materials and then watch a video at home later that day. In this case, the students could join a Google Meet class with students in the GATE cohort. As a parent, I would be happy to volunteer to help prep supplies for kits that kids take home. Thank you for considering ways we can provide enriching experiences for all of our students while distance learning takes place. Continuing to provide GATE will create a sense of normalcy for our students. Thank you. I succeed my time.
Thanks, Sarah. Michelle Smith, followed by Teresita Carlos. And Teresita will be our final speaker.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Michelle.
So I just wanted to check in on some points that have been touched upon by other speakers and also by Dr. Baker and Ms. Wolf. One of them is on childcare. When will the childcare options be made available? We are only about 3 or 4 weeks away from a school opening, and so families need to know what their plans are going to be. So when will we know? And also, secondly, when will students with highest need be prioritized into those childcare programs, be it low socioeconomic status, housing, and even maybe academic need, that they might need extra support from an adult in person. Second is I forget, don't remember, I think Kayla talking about how can we support our teachers and students by providing them with additional home supplies for their students. So, if we can coordinate weekly or bi-weekly pickups. My kids' summer program did this and it's working great. For remote learning, they do their crafts at home, that helps support learning. I lost my train of thought, but that's essentially what I wanted to talk about, is just to ensure that we make sure that we're making those connections. Younger students definitely need those tactile materials so that to help them learn. The other I do remember now is making sure we get technology out to families as early as possible, so we do not have any loss in instructional time in the beginning of the year. So no Zoom classes or anything before all students have that technology.
Thanks, Michelle. And then Teresita Carlos.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you guys, the board members and everybody. I know you guys have done tremendous work and hard work. It's not easy, and also finding all those COVID-related procedures that the state has given. I am currently actually working at a preschool that has opened. However, I am one of the parents that is gonna keep their child home because of the added exposure. I would not want anybody to get sick because of my child being sick. And also, I know that at our preschool, we are keeping siblings together, which I know is something that the school district cannot do. And so we have mixed ages because of that. So that is something that has helped us lessen the exposure risk. But there's still a risk of exposure. So that is why I was even planning on keeping my child home up until December or after the winter break, only because I don't want to risk anybody else getting sick, and especially because winter break is around the time when all the kids are getting sick from cold or anything else. I also want to say that my kids went to Henry Ford. The teachers hit the ground running as soon as all of this happened, and they did an amazing job with all of their distance learning. Miss Pam Barsech, she did an amazing job and meeting with the kids and just, even having nighttime meetings with them on occasion. And she just did an amazing, amazing job. And the kids really loved it. They enjoyed it. And my thing was about that is that she didn't just do distance learning with online stuff. It was also on paper, which I really appreciated because I don't really want my child to be on screen all day. So thank you guys so much for all your hard work. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Teresita, and everyone else who spoke this evening. So we can go into board comments, questions. Would anybody like to go first? Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, First, I'd like to thank all the teachers. I've been in touch with a lot of teachers, and they're already spending 20 to 30 hours a week preparing for next year under these conditions. In fact, one teacher just had both hips replaced, and he's now working 20 hours a week. So our teachers really are dedicated. I think we should start by acknowledging they're not waiting till school to start to get started. I'd like to suggest, I took some notes on the chat, and I think it would be important to capture them. Can teachers meet students 6 feet apart? Now, I don't expect you to answer that now, but I think if we could capture these questions and then push out the answers, that'd be helpful. Where I am is safety is my #1 priority for the students, the teachers, and the staff. And so I just feel like that is just an unnegotiable thing. And I know the other board members feel that way and have said that previously. I think there's been some great ideas like getting the technology out to the parents early so that the kids can practice. I talked to Dr. Baker today. I was on a county Office of Ed call, and they were talking to, and they asked the parent what was the most positive thing that their school district did. And they said every day at the beginning of the school day, the teacher had like a Google Meet with the parents and spent 5 minutes talking about what happened the previous day and what they were planning to do this day. And he said that was really helpful. So I hope we'll consider that. And then, so we don't have to maybe not recreate the wheel. I think there's schools like Notre Dame High School actually pivoted to distance learning. And my neighbor's child was in school from 8 to 3, and they went to school for like 45 minutes an hour, and it was all asynchronous. And so I think if there's a way we could look at that, and I'd really like to have, I don't think we can do it quite like the bond where we had the Gantt chart that showed what's open and where we are, but I think it would be helpful to have like a master document of all the things that that we're looking at and kind of a sense of where we are. And I don't mean like a detail, but maybe just, we got this list of 100 really pressing items, and half of them are at 50%, half are at 20%, whatever. I don't know what that looks like, but I think it would be helpful for the board as well as parents to kind of get a sense of how we're closing in on this target. And the last point is, I totally agree that and I'm glad you're going to talk to the Stanford people, have a sense of what event triggers us entertaining going back to school. And I think that would be helpful for all. Thank you. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, Dr. Baker, I know you and your cabinet are supposed to be off in the month of July, and you guys spend horrendous hours the other 11 months, and you guys haven't even had a day off. So I'd just like to publicly thank the cabinet and you for all your hard work and dedication to our students, teachers, and staff. And I'm done. Thanks.
We're normally not off a month. We take about a couple weeks in July.
Okay, so that totally invalidates my point.
Yeah, it's only 2 weeks. This year, no one's off.
Would anybody else like to speak?
I'm happy to go, or Maria or Cecilia, would you guys like to go?
Oh, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Baker and Ms. Wolf. Really appreciated hearing more of the details tonight, and I know that you're actively working. One of the things I wanted to point out is that I think you are beginning to incorporate a lot of the comments that we've been getting over emails, and I know that I've tried to respond to some of those. We're getting a lot of them, but those that have newer ideas or reinforcing important ideas, I have been making sure that I pass those on to Ms. Wolf, and then Dr. Baker is getting a lot of those as well. So I was really happy to see, I think tonight you're already incorporating much of the kind of public comments and ideas that we've been getting from teachers and students and staff. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that. And I think they're all really good ideas. I did want to just ask, I guess I have a few more comments, but I did want to ask a question. Are we going to still be going back to parents in the next couple of weeks and asking them their preferences around, or a commitment about distant learning, independent or homeschooling learning? And then, if we, when and if we get to the hybrid or in person, are you going to be asking about that now, or are we just going to sort of go into, anyway, could you talk a little bit about that?
So the thought right now, we are doing distance learning. That's what's going to occur.
Right.
But you do have some parents that were interested, that have voiced that they would like to see like more information about independent study and also homeschooling. So for those parents who have contacted us, we are going to contact them in regard to those two items, the independent study and the homeschooling, and what that would look like. We hadn't thought of putting out a survey about independent study or homeschooling. It's just for those parents who brought that up, and there are not a lot of parents, or probably about 12 at this point in time.
Okay, so I think I think there may be more who have been waiting for the survey or something. So I think we need to just publicly let them know that they need to then contact, is it you? Is it, whoever? Because I think I know that there was a list of at least 40 of them that have a Facebook page. There could be more at this point talking about independent learning and homeschooling.
I don't go on Facebook, so I don't know. So maybe you would. Yeah. But if you want to get on the Facebook page, Elisa, and give me the names of the parents, we'll be happy to contact them.
Okay. Or I think publicly we're saying tonight, and I'll get back to the few that have contacted me that I think are on this Facebook page. I have not been on the Facebook page, but I can let them know that they need to then contact you. Or do we want to have a form? I mean, I don't want you to get inundated with individual emails, or is that the best way to go?
It'd probably be the best way, because I don't know, with the exceptions of the one that contacted me individually.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll just ask them to contact you directly then, and I guess we're putting it out to the 300 plus people who are on tonight that if you're interested in independent learning or homeschooling, you should send a message to Dr. Baker. Okay, so that's one thing that I know we've been getting questions on. Let's see, I just think, I'll reinforce what Dennis said. I do think there's a lot of good ideas in the chat. I mean, everything from, home supplies to kids to childcare questions. I mean, all sorts of stuff coming up that I do think that similar to what we've done with frequently asked questions when we were thinking about the hybrid learning model, we may want to revisit some of these just so we're not having to answer them with each and individual every email we get, but we could then refer people to, here, because some of the questions everybody has, and then we could start to answer those so people can get a sense of what it is. I think that would be helpful.
So we'll get a copy of the chat. Kyle, give us a copy of the chat, and then we can answer those questions and put them up on the website.
Great. And then I think, Ms. Wolf, I've been copying you on some of the emails. I know there's some questions there, so maybe if they're different than the chat, we could also get those as well. And then I did want to just speak to the testing, tracking, and tracing. And I know that many of us board members were on the county call today, where again, we had the county health officer on the call along with many other county staff people and elected officials. And basically what we were told at this point is we're pretty much on our own with that component. And many school board members had questions around that. And basically with the numbers we're seeing right now, they do not have the capacity to test everybody, as well as they certainly do not have the capacity to trace contacts. Now they are adding staff. They hope to have more by early to mid-August. But even with that, I think what I heard is that amount of staff will still not be enough to support what the schools would need when they begin to reopen in person with our current numbers. So I just want to put that out to the 300 plus people on the call tonight, that if you want to do some advocacy at the state level, I think that's a place that we could do it. If you look at any other country that has successfully opened more than we have, and we have not been doing it successfully so far in this country, one, they're getting their numbers down, and two, they have really robust testing, tracing, and tracking. And that is not something that we will be able to do with the current budget that we have at the school district. We are barely able to provide a quality education with education, let alone starting to do health-related activities that really somebody else needs to take responsibility for, or if they want us to do it, then they need to provide money, and then we could set up the infrastructure to do it. Certainly we could hire staff and do all of that, but it really doesn't make sense for us to try to do it if there's already expertise in this area elsewhere. So did I get that right, colleagues?
Yeah, Dr. Morrow was very, very clear today that we are severely lacking in the ability for testing and tracing and tracking, and that school districts are 100% on their own to do that, and that we can't reopen safely without being able to do testing and tracing. So I would say don't go to Dr. Morrow to the community, because he'll just send you right back to us. If you're going to advocate, you have to advocate at the state level.
And then I did want to acknowledge the couple of teachers that did talk about, you know, the gatherings that we know will be happening in the November and December timeframe with all the various holidays. And the other thing that they have talked about on the county calls, and this has been brought up in various health related conversations, is the biggest trigger right now with new cases are the gatherings, and it's the small, medium-sized family gatherings. So I don't think none of us are prepared to make a decision tonight in terms of timing other than the trimester, but I do think that our planning team ought to at least be thinking about all of that, because I do worry about us going into a situation where in November and December we could absolutely see spikes with gatherings if we have not got our numbers down before that. Oh, and the other thing actually that Dr. Murrow said is, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he said that he didn't see the virus going away anytime soon, that he expects it to go through the community, keep going through the community for a while.
Yep, that's correct. I heard that also. Maria or Cecilia, would you like to?
Sure, I'll follow. So I also heard that, Elisa, but I think from what I've been hearing is that the county can't do anything because they don't have the supplies. They don't have the, you know, you can have all the people to do the testing, but if you don't have the kits, what good is that? And trying for us to, you know, even if we have the money, who's going to do it for us? So until they have the supply chain in place, I don't really see us opening, because that's one of the things that we need to have. We have to have the testing and the contact tracing in place in order to keep everybody safe. So as Dr. Morrow said, it's going to be here with us for quite a while. So I just want to also echo my thanks to the staff, to Liz for all her hard work, with everybody else, Wendy, and all of you who have worked tirelessly all these days, day and night. Dr. Baker, I don't think ever sleeps. Poor man. He doesn't even get a day off. But I know that you guys are doing a tremendous job in pivoting from one to the other program. So I'm really appreciative of all your hard work, and I'm looking forward to us continuing to provide high quality education to our students. And as you said, we were not prepared, so we didn't do the kind of job that our students deserved, and our teachers didn't have the training, but this time around it will be better. You can count on it, right, Liz? And with that, I'll pass it on to someone else.
I just want to share for the audience who couldn't see, Liz was nodding her head in agreement. Cecilia, would you like to share anything?
Sure. So I think I would want to just reiterate that as a board, I think our first priority is everyone's safety. And so I do want to say that, like we've said it before, things will not be the same as they were when we shelter in place. And I do think that everyone should be a little patient with teachers and administrators. At one point, again, like Dr. Baker mentioned earlier, if things are not working out, please communicate, because I think that's the biggest thing. whether it's going to be teachers speaking to the parents, parents to the teachers, and vice versa. Because of the, I guess, lack of, and I just lost my train of thought, support from the county health department, unfortunately. Again, I think we just need to make sure that when we do come back to school, it's when it's safest for everyone to return. So I think that's the only thing, my only comment right now. And just like everyone has already said, thanks everyone for your really, for all the hard work that you've put in. I know it's been, you know, back to back every day, going about this terrible, you know, situation we are all in. This is not just Redwood City, this is the entire world. So again, I think just patience and communication would get us to a better place. So thank you.
So I just want to, first of all, repeat the thanks and acknowledgement to all of our staff that have been working so tirelessly, and many of them volunteering time, not even getting paid for all this. But everybody who would have liked to have had a little bit of a summer break, and none of you were able to get that. I appreciate all the work that has gone into this. I'll repeat that safety is my #1 concern. You can go back and hear what I said at the last meeting. It's up on the website. So I won't repeat any of that. I do want to, I don't know where we're at with PE, but I would like to advocate in favor of having PE classes, at least for the middle school, if not for the younger ones. As a parent, I was able to see in the spring that it can be really well done. And then I would ask that you not share that with my own children, because they'll be really upset with me for advocating for PE, just like they're really mad at their mom for keeping schools closed in the fall. And I know the tech department has been working full speed ahead, and I imagine that they're going even fuller speed ahead with our devices and getting, you know, hotspots out and loading all the apps that we need. So at some point, maybe we can have a time frame of when those will be rolled out to families, and how we can get those before the start of school. And then I am just curious, Dr. Baker, are students already placed in classrooms, or is that something that's just going to be starting?
So the principals that's one of the items that I want to discuss on Monday at the principals meeting, is the classroom placements, because that needs to be done sooner than later. Because I know, remember, some of our parents were in these, wanted to do these pods and make sure that the kids were, you know, together. So what I want to do, one of the items on the agenda for myself on Monday, I know Liz has quite a bit on there, but myself is definitely get these class lists done quickly. They may have been done even before they left, and that takes place at many schools before they leave on vacation.
So that's what I was wondering, because I know it usually happens around like May.
Yeah, so I want to make sure, and then once I get those, then we can start communicating with the parents. We can start communicating at each school site the class lists or the class roster that will take place. The other thing is that definitely want to remind you and remind our community that many of our teachers and staff took professional development during the summer on distance learning. There was a lot going on at the County Office of Ed. Some participated in that, and some took other classes online. So, and brought back great ideas. So I really want to acknowledge that. So that's fantastic. And excuse me, as we move forward, we'll continue to whether Liz calls it a playbook or a guidebook that's being developed. It's going to be essential that, you know, the parents really are aware of what's in that guide or playbook, whatever you called it. And also it's definitely something our teachers will be using, and our teachers will be adding to. So it's really going to be very resourceful for all of us to have that. With that being said, again, I am very confident in the great staff that we have in the Redwood City School District and how they're moving forward in a positive nature to really show that this is going to work.
Can I just add, because I don't think I said thank you enough. I think I acknowledged Dr. Baker and Ms. Wolf, but I did want to just say that I think all of us board members, we've been getting a lot of messages from teachers and staff, instructional assistants and office managers and librarians and custodians. I mean, lots of people just saying how they are really gearing up for this next school year and they want to make it great for our students and our families. And I think everybody recognizes that the crisis learning and action that happened March through June was crisis. You know, we were all in a crisis with the new pandemic. Now we're living in the pandemic, and I think we're all more equipped to help our students. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. I know every staff person in our district is really working hard and gearing up, and you know, and it's for the students. And I know we want to get the students back to the campus, but we also want to keep everybody safe. So I just want to say thank you very much to everybody who's working so hard. Thanks.
Janet, could I make another comment, please? So I realized that I didn't say something earlier because I said it last week, but I do feel like it bears repeating. And that's, I don't think any of us are taking this decision lightly. And we all certainly understand that, and sympathize with the parents that they're very stressed out, and they have a right to be. And I feel bad, and I know we all feel bad that the parents are stressed out, but we are really trying to do what's best for the students, staff, and teachers. So I just left that out and felt like it should be repeated.
Yeah, thank you.
Janet, can I also add something?
Sure.
I just also wanted to thank the parents. I know that, you know, especially during this last few months, we needed them to be there, to be our partners, and I think we're going to need them again this coming year. So I hope that we can continue to collaborate, to work together. And as Dennis said, it is a pretty tough time, and we understand, but I think that we need to figure out how we're going to make it work, and we need to collaborate and do it for the students. So again, thank you to all the parents, to all our volunteers as well. And I don't know if we could use volunteers again this year, but hopefully we can. So as they say, it takes a village. It's going to take everybody again to make it work. So thank you.
Thanks. So with that, this is an action item. We would need a motion to go forward with the full-time distance learning.
So moved.
So moved.
Oh.
Second.
So I think that was Maria and Dennis.
Okay.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee McBride?
Aye.
Trustee Marcus?
Aye.
Trustee Diaz-Slocum?
Aye.
Aye. Vice President McAvoy?
Aye.
President Lawson?
Aye. So thank you for that. To everyone who's about to drop off the call, because that's what you were here for, thank you for staying engaged this whole time. We appreciate everyone being a part of this. So with that said, we can move on to 11.2, approval of the 2020 Uniform Complete Procedures.
So this is something that comes before you every year. Are there any questions on it? No.
And okay, so do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Maria, Cecilia, and a roll call vote, please.
Trustee McBride?
Aye.
Trustee Marcus?
Aye.
Trustee Diaz-Slocum?
Aye.
Vice President McAvoy?
Aye.
President Lawson?
Aye. And finally, 12.1, information on the quarterly Williams report. Were there any questions or comments? None. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do we have a motion to adjourn? You want to hang out?
So moved.
Elisa.
Second.
And Maria. Can I just get a thumbs up, nodding for all those in favor? Thank you. All right, we'll see you guys back next week at our special board meeting, final one of the 1920 school year at 6 p.m.
Right.
And then Kyle, can you please copy that? I think we can copy chat too, but could you please copy it and send it to the board?
I just saved it.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kyle.
Welcome.
Bye.